Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And this morning, I am meeting with Fabey Insights founder and CEO, Bob Fabey, and we are very much looking forward to connecting. We've kind of been connecting on social media a little bit, and now we get to do the deep dive and find out who you are and what you're all about.
I'm excited about it. Thanks.
I am too. And you didn't have to come far. You're here in Tempe.
I am.
Very good. How long have you guys been here?
So when we first moved, we moved out to Mesa because there was no, it was during the housing boom.
Mm-hmm.
And then we landed on the top of the bubble when the bust happened.
Okay.
And so we were trying to get to Tempe because that's where we were working at the time. And so I've been here about 17 years.
Yeah, good. Tell us about Fabey Insights.
So it's designed to help people go deeper a little bit in terms of personality, behavior, but then also coaching, and primarily kind of making a big push in the realm of dignity. What I'm finding is that there's kind of a gap that's happening around dignity in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fabey Insights is designed to try to help in all of those areas, but particularly with dignity.
So tell me about how would you define dignity in this context?
Dignity is the worth of every human being, period. Like, period, full stop, no cap, whatever the way to put it is. Yeah.
And the gap that you've witnessed and you see people experience in the workplace is that we're expected to show up a certain way, or we have to leave some of our heritage or our culture or our personality behind.
All of those things. I think also what happens is that businesses are trying to do a better job of recognizing the differences in people. But as they're doing that, they're creating policies and procedures, and they're not actually treating people. So they want to say, and it's right, it's good that they're hiring people for diversity and inclusion, but you cannot have inclusion without dignity. You can check boxes. You can say we have the right people at the table, which is critical, but without dignity, it doesn't really matter who's sitting at the table.
How did this come about?
That
you landed on this word,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's more than a word. I'm not trying to simplify it.
No, it's fine.
What's the backstory for dignity specifically?
So one of the things that I have noticed is this rise of objectification in our culture, where what we're doing is we're placing people in boxes, and we're saying, "Oh, you're this. You have a name actually that's." People are now saying, "Oh, you're a Karen," and it's like, well, wait. There are people who, she's a daughter, she's a mom, maybe she's a person, she's a human being, and so as I've observed that, and I've observed how people are just literally placing people in boxes so that they can treat them a certain way and justify their behavior towards those people. I've wrestled pretty deeply with that and said, well, aren't we all human, and shouldn't we start there? And what does that look like? And of course, other people have written on dignity. I really appreciate Donna Hicks, who's written a couple books on dignity and done a great job at Harvard there. And so as I've read those things, I've noticed that this is the thing that kind of brings us together. And I would look for things that bridge us as opposed to build walls and things. And I don't mean to use that as a metaphor, but it is real. And so I'm just honestly curious about what does that look like. And then, of course, when you bring up dignity, it has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. So it's kind of a weird term, but it's really
a fantastic term. And I don't hear it typically in the workplace. We hear a lot of other terms, but this is it's perfect. And the way you defined it makes so much sense. It's simply just the respect, right, of everyone.
And what I would say actually is that, and this is one of the things that's weird about dignity, is that dignity is identity. And so if you are human, you have dignity. So I can't erase it. I can validate it. It can be violated. And those are terms, again, from Donna Hicks that I really appreciate. But then respect is actually behavior.
Okay.
And so the difference between identity and behavior is massive. So I actually don't have to respect anyone, which is kind of funny. People aren't sure about that. And so when you think about respect, it can be lost or it can be gained. And you can have respect for an office, but not the person in the office.
Right.
So I always think about respect as if somebody says to me, you have to respect me, you automatically lose respect. I mean, it's like it's a guaranteed. It's like you must respect me. I'll be like, probably not.
Yeah.
So respect is behavior based and it's earned. and you can gain it or you can lose it. But dignity is identity, and that means that it doesn't matter whether I respect you.
Yeah.
I will treat you with dignity.
Incredible distinction.
Uh-huh.
And thank you.
It's super important.
I was trying to like summarize what you had said when
I
you first.
apologize.
No, that show's done.
Yeah.
That was perfect. And I will never not remember that.
Yeah.
So when you go and you work with
Mhm.
companies,
Mhm.
and are you working with individuals? Are you working with teams? Talk a little
Yes.
bit about the work that you do,
Sure.
and then who do you prefer to do that work with?
Sure. So I kind of work with everybody. So I do a lot of coaching,
Mhm.
and
One-on-one, group?
one-on-one.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is we can talk about dignity all day in terms of what that looks like, how we treat one another. It's a much different thing when you look in the mirror
Hmm.
and you say, okay, am I validating my own dignity? And so I use a number of different assessments and tools to say, like, okay, where are we at with your personality or your behavior, or what are those things that we're trying to address?
Mhm.
And then ultimately, the question is, am I treating myself with dignity? And that's huge. And so that goes a deep dive in terms of, it's past emotional intelligence, it's past behaviors, it's past personality. There's something else there, and that's an core identity issue. So when I'm coaching, I typically can go deep dive that way. When you're working with teams, it's a little bit harder because not everybody on the team's willing to go that deep and wrestle with those
Yep.
kinds of issues. And so with teams, what I usually do is talk about communication and what communication looks like and how we can communicate with dignity. And so then, if you scale that out and you say, okay, beyond the team, and you're kind of dealing with an entire group, then what I try to do is personality and talk about how we communicate within personality, but then what are our preferences? What does that look like? And if we can operate with each other and with our preferences, that's a step towards validating each other's dignity.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your background, your journey
Yeah.
that landed you here. And
Yeah.
this is the deep dish dive, right? I mean, this is Deep
Right.
Impact Leadership. That's how we'll be publishing this podcast.
Okay.
And I'm known to not have a conversation unless it's going to go deep.
Okay,
So
good. Yeah,
you're in
I'm
good
in the same
company.
maybe we're kindred
For
spirits.
sure.
I don't do weather very well.
I don't, sandwich shops or,
Yeah.
just the light talk.
Yeah.
I like start to squirm and then I
Yeah.
go, I'm out of here.
Right.
So this is my comfort zone.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for one, my background is as a kid, I grew up in a house where post-traumatic stress disorder, because my dad was in Vietnam and a number of other things, where the environment was unstable. I had an enormous overbite. And so, this is the early 80s. I'm giving away my age.
Also
And
in good company.
love 80s rock.
Right.
But as a kid, everybody's dealt with having their dignity violated, and I would have never used those terms when I was growing up,
Yeah.
but I know that's what it is now. And so having a sense of being the other is really important, and I certainly experience that often.
Mhm.
And then as I've grown, and these are terms that I'm using now that I wouldn't have used then, obviously. But as I've grown, I've watched how that's happened over and over to different people groups or to different people, period. And just really wanting to address that pretty deeply. Like, there's something broken here that I
Gosh.
can't figure out. And then, as a kid, growing up in Western Montana, I mean, we were just kids, having fun, but having a deep sense of, like, it's not just me. I'm seeing it happen to other people. By the time I got into college, I was running my life my own way and running that train into the ground pretty quickly.
Like most of us.
Well, yeah, I was doing a good job. And so I actually, my faith has made a really important impact in me. I became a Christian in college, primarily, and then kind of wrestled really deeply with some of the problems within Christianity and the objectification that's occurred within my faith.
Mhm.
And so, kind of just landed on this idea that, one, just because you're Christian doesn't make it, doesn't mean that you've got that all figured out. But then two, a bigger picture of, like, wow, I'm seeing this happening. It's a human condition, and how can I help address that human condition? And then, of course, well, I mean, the pandemic's changed where we meet,
And how we meet.
and how we meet.
Why we're meeting.
Exactly. So I was grateful for an in-person interview instead
Yeah,
of Zoom. so what's happened, obviously, is that people are gathering in different spaces, third spaces, and different things. And so, how do you get a message of dignity into different spaces? And the
Mhm.
workspace is where, I've spent over 20 years listening to people how their dignity's been violated in work. And so that's the effort, is to say, well, what can we do in the workspace that changes that dynamic a little bit?
Mhm. You work one-on-one, you
Yep.
go into companies, you
Yep.
start with communication, you do
hmm
some assessments.
hmm
About how long do people work with you? Does it vary?
It varies. It depends upon how deep they want to go. So I always think of it like maybe like snorkeling versus scuba diving.
Good.
You know, so I'm always curious about what I don't do is I don't just say, oh well, here's the plan.
Mhm.
And try to listen to people and see what is it that you're experiencing that you're trying to address. The nice thing is that we have a number of tools in the belt so that we can just be specific about that. And if it's one thing, then we can treat one thing or we can address it. But if there's more, then we can kind of go there. So the certifications are in behavior, and so when we're talking about people's behavior, that's not always easy to change, and so that can look like 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, depending
Mhm.
upon what people experience. And then if they want to go in a different direction, there's personality assessments. So the problem with both of those is that people say, "Oh, yeah, I did that." And I go, really? Tell me more." And people say, "Yeah, we brought somebody in and we did that, and, oh, yeah, it was fine,
Here's what I
so
am.
here's
I
what
don't
I
know what
am."
it means.
That's right, and they put themselves in a box,
Mhm.
they objectify themselves, or they objectify other people, and there's not really kind of a robust way of rolling that out within the community. And so I work pretty hard at that, where I say, like, "Well, what difference is this gonna make?" And from there, if they choose, and this is maybe more on the scuba end of things, is that we start talking about emotional intelligence. Most people have a sense of what that means, but
Mhm.
then the ability to actually identify an emotion and then actually grapple with what they're feeling in a healthy manner is different. So I think about that as more of like a scuba dive. The place that dignity plays in all of that is that it can be either a snorkel or a scuba,
Mhm.
depending upon what people are looking for.
It's a great, barrier to entry or,
Mhm,
releasing the barrier to entry,
mhm,
and then you can really go deep, or
mhm.
you can keep it more communication level depending on what an organization or an individual wants to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think and it's funny because with communication, I'll press the snorkeling analogy. Maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't, but you really get a sense that you are in a different world when you snorkel. And I think with communication, what happens is that people primarily have, I think of it like four different languages. And so people don't even know that they're speaking German. They just speak German. You
Mhm.
grow up in a house that speaks German, you just speak German, no thing. And then you meet somebody who speaks Italian. And this is true, actually. I just experienced this. We were just in Rwanda, and I experienced this, so I know that it's not just us, which I was grateful for. I'm trying to learn Kinyarwanda as we're driving around, and my third driver translator was able to speak louder
Right,
every
it's
time I didn't get it right. And so what I know about language is that speaking slower and louder doesn't help.
no.
I've watched many of us in the West do that to those who
Yes.
aren't from here, and so he would increase his volume, and
And still say the
and
same
still say the
words.
same words and say them more slowly, and I would do everything I could to pronounce them. It was pretty funny. But so what happens with communication is that people will do the same thing with one another. Why aren't they getting this? I sent this email. Why are they not doing it this way? Et cetera, et cetera. And I think, well, it's just like snorkeling. When you put your face in the water, it's a different world.
Yeah.
And so when you're speaking to somebody who has a different preference than you, it's important to speak their language. And what does that look like? And it does look very different. It's not above the surface, it's below. And so if you and I were to take assessments and we realized, okay, maybe I speak German and you speak Italian. Well, my job then, because I know, is to learn as much Italian as I can. That's a dignified response to the
Mhm.
differences. And so, what can I do to speak Italian? Well, I can start with food because I really like food. But it's more like, whoa, when I write you an email, I'm going to speak German when I first write the email. Well, what does it look like if they speak Italian? And so, an example of that would be if I am maybe somebody who prefers speed and I prefer task. the email is going to look like, you're probably going to get what you need in the subject line, let alone, like the two sentence thing that says, this is what I need and this is when I need it.
Yeah.
But if you have a preference for maybe detail and maybe slower processing, well, then what I need to be able to do is write an email that communicates in your language and not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously when you get an email from me that's German, it's incumbent upon you to try to learn a little German.
Yeah, you'd want it to reciprocate.
That's right.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm thinking about Daryl, our producer, and the risk of embarrassing him since he's here with us. We've been working together just a little over a year. In the beginning, at least my perspective, a lot of headbutting and struggling, just trying to find our way. We're both very dominant, controlling personalities. And have a love for what we're doing and a love for people, our guests and our clients. And I really had to I kept wanting Daryl to change. And I really needed Daryl to understand me for the first 7 to 8, maybe 9 months. And then I finally had to look in the mirror. I don't know that the word dignity ever would show up. What can I do to honor who he is and honor where he's at? And grow from there. Like, what are you said it earlier, what are the commonalities? What are the things, what's the foundation for what we're growing here and who we are as people? And it's been magic ever since. And we've talked a little bit about it since then. I know he's made a lot of changes and adjustments as well, but it's been that beautiful dance in trying to, honor each other and meet each other where we're at, speak each other's languages.
Yeah, it's critical, especially for organizations. What I think, unfortunately, what I've heard from people is, that's just a bunch of fluff, or that's, and I think, well, actually, this is like getting under the hood of the car and working really hard to make sure the car runs really well.
Right.
And that's hard work. And especially when maybe somebody doesn't want to reciprocate. So I think in terms of, we talk about leaders, people think, well, I'm a leader. So I'm just going to run and, everybody can follow me and get out of my way and all that kind of stuff.
Pretty much how I showed up in the first couple conversations with Daryl. You will follow me. I own the business. I am a leader.
I am a leader.
He's like, okay.
Well, so what happens is you can ask the question, and this is one of the things that I think is really important. It's not just what we do, it's how we do it. And the how is as important as the what.
Right.
And so you could say, well, I'm a leader. Well, a lot of people don't want to follow leaders. It doesn't matter if that's how you show up. It's the how thing that's really critical. And so if you're self-reflective, if you show a modicum of emotional intelligence and you think, well, what's it like to be in Daryl's shoes when I show up this way? That's a really important question. And so anytime the organization has a lack of emotional intelligence or a lack of ability to kind of self-reflect, the car just doesn't run as well. Businesses don't run as well. And eventually that leaks and businesses suffer because all of us leak.
Right.
So yeah, it's super important for those kinds of things to occur.
Did you say we all leak?
We all leak.
I agree.
Yeah.
And if we can be self-aware and self-reflective, we can clean it up as we're going along.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or you can ask the question like, how am I leaking? I mean, that's just really important. And I'm a big advocate of asking questions. It's not always a blessing to people because I'll ask questions of that. What are you talking about? Or why are you asking that question? But I think what I try to do is say, okay, what ways am I leaking?
Right.
And how am I leaking right now versus how I was leaking 6 months ago? And life changes are super, super important because we're going to feel a lot of pressure. So we are going to leak. And then it's like, well, what's this looking like? And how is it for other people to experience me when these things are occurring? So whether that's in our personal lives or business, it's our full self that we bring wherever we are. And so those kinds of reflections and questions are important. I do find that many leaders don't ask those questions, and they're important to ask.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trauma. Where does trauma, I know you know a little bit about my background, what I've been working on, both professionally and personally. Where does trauma come into the work that you do with people? Do you build that piece in there? You mentioned in your own upbringing, there was some post-traumatic stress.
Yeah. Well, one, everybody's hurting to some degree.
We're all leaking.
Everybody's leaking. There's something going on. But I don't walk around with this suspicious like, how are you hurting today?
Yeah.
What I do is I'll try to ask questions. And if I observe that, then I'll try to talk about it or say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Can you tell me more about that? my dealings with people in general, when it comes to dignity, is I think, now I don't know whether he actually said it, but it's attributed to Robin Williams, with everybody's
Mm-hmm.
fighting a hard battle. And I just assume that.
Yep.
And so I think that's just part of being human.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kintsugi. Are you familiar with this? So I actually have a book on dignity that's coming out, and so I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Okay, let's pause.
Yes. Yeah.
That's important information.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
When is that?
It should be released in November.
This November.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay, that's so good.
I'm the worst self-promoter you will ever meet.
Well, that's why you're here, so that I can do it for you.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
fantastic. Is
Yeah.
it called Dignity?
It's going to be called, the working title is The Dignity Gap.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And so in it, there's a chapter about Kintsugi. And what that is it's the Japanese art of helping broken things.
I'm embarrassed because I just told you that I was up at a cabin with friends, and
Mhm.
my blood burst. That particular weekend, we did a Kintsugi bowl. We
Oh,
each
yeah.
bought our own
Yeah, beautiful.
and brought them up there. So
Yeah.
the name didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners what it is now that I've interrupted you, because now I know
Okay.
what we're talking about.
Sorry. So my undergrad's in history, so I'm a bit of a dork. So I'll tell the
Good,
story.
go.
So there's a Japanese warlord who really enjoyed the tea ceremony, which is a significant ceremony in the culture at the time. And they actually value the cup more than the tea, which is odd for us. But he had a particularly precious cup to him. And at some point, somehow it broke. And everybody was scrambling, like, this is not what you want to have happen. You might get beheaded or something crazy back then. And so what they did was they took it to the Chinese people who were living on the island at the time, who had done work with porcelain and other things. And the way that they would fix things was to drill small holes and then put wires in it, and to try to bring it together. But it would remain that way. So when they presented the cup to the warlord, I mean, he was horrified. I mean, because it looks like Frankenstein's monster.
Right.
It's got all this stuff. And of course, everybody was scrambling, like, what are we going to do? And what they wound up doing was taking some pitch or some kind of resin from a tree and then putting gold leaf in it, so that then the fractures were put together with gold. And when he saw the cup, he was overjoyed. He said, it's more beautiful now than when it originally started. And I think that if we can treat one another with that kind of kindness, how can I be a part of putting together your brokenness with gold? What does that look like? I think that's a really important part of trauma. And so if I'm aware that people have experienced, whether they call it big T or little t trauma, doesn't matter to me, but how can I be a part of somebody putting that together with gold? Well, a lot of leaders are like, listen, I'm trying to figure out the bottom line. I'm trying to do, like, I'm not a counselor. I don't want to be doing this. What's going on? And I say, okay, well, I'm not talking about the full meal here. I'm not asking you to be a counselor, but I am asking you to consider, what might that look like? And it may look like, well, one, just learning their language. We're creating this space where dignity is just kind of a thing. And then people can be broken and leaking, but being slowly put together with that. So,
And the result
Beauty.
tends to be more beautiful.
Well, I think about brokenness maybe in a different way. The assumption is that everybody is, and then it's like, well, what role do I want to play in that?
Mhm.
I can sit there and blame them for being broken. I can be upset that they're not holding my tea, quote unquote, the way that I want them
Yep,
to. I can
yep.
do all those things, or I could say, yeah, me too. How can we be together in
Mhm.
this? I think it's really important.
Is Amy's your wife?
Yes,
She's the one who introduced us on LinkedIn.
I
Do you
think that's
recall?
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And is she involved in the
The
Fabey
work with this,
Insights?
yeah, she is a little bit. She is with Express Scripts Cigna, and
Okay.
she's a director there, and so she's been enormously busy, obviously, with COVID and some of those things. She operates on a pretty high level, and we show better as a couple. She's a pretty remarkable gal.
It sounds like it.
She
Yeah.
is. She's fantastic. What I try to do with Amy and the way that we try to work together is that she'll give me some insights from a corporate sense. And then obviously just our own practice of being married for 27 years
Wow.
helps us to be able to go like, oh, we do speak very
So
different
good.
languages.
Even
And
this far into the
oh
relationship.
my
Yeah.
goodness, every day. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you can have all the skills you want. I think we're as skilled as any couple I know, but if you don't have humility, you're not going to get
Right.
anywhere. And so try to practice humility as much as we can with one another. Even though, I mean, she may be more akin to you in terms of leader. She's pretty hard charger, and she does things really well.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, humility is part of that.
Big part of it.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy doing outside of work?
It's interesting. I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu when I'm not injured, and I really enjoy that.
For how long?
Off and on for 5 years, 6
Yeah.
years, yeah, and so I'm actually waiting on a surgery right now, which is
Oh,
super
wow.
disappointing,
Yeah. So
but
you're
it's
not able to
not right
participate
now,
right
but
now.
yeah, but it's a grappling discipline, and
Yes.
what's really great about grappling is that it's just you and another person, and it's just constant problem solving.
Wow.
It's super cathartic, and they've actually found that that first responders, people who've been in the military are finding that, and they're doing clinical studies actually, that these grappling disciplines actually help with the
Oh,
post-traumatic
sure.
stress disorder. So it's really great. I mean, and the communities that I'm a part of because of that are just they're a ton of joy. I mean, I really enjoy them. So I like to do that. I really do enjoy just being with people. I mean, it's really fun. If I can spend time with Amy, I'm always excited about that. Avid football fan.
Okay. And it's
Follow.
football season
I'm
right now.
so
Who's your
grateful.
team?
So well, the University of Montana Grizzlies are
Okay.
my team, so I follow them um, avidly. I'll put it that
Mhm.
way. When they play Northern Arizona, we try to make our way up there and wear our Grizz gear.
That's
And
my alma mater for my
I'm so
undergrad.
sorry to hear that.
Back in the day, we
Yeah.
were Big Sky. I don't know if
Yeah,
they're
it's
are they
a Big
still
Sky
Big Sky?
Conference.
Yeah.
We try to get back to Montana when we can. We really enjoy Montana.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful state.
yeah, it's breathtaking.
How did you get here?
So I came here for work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so there was a job that I went into the office and had a phone call from a guy from Tempe, Arizona, and he said, "You know, I heard you might be looking for work, or I'm looking for somebody."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Isn't that just Gila monsters and cacti?" I was
Right.
like, "What's Arizona?" Like, ooh, whoa. And it didn't take long for us to recognize, like, I think we can make a go of it here, despite the vast difference.
Yes.
And so I enjoy those things, really enjoy coffee. Coffee's really
I
good.
saw that in your bio, and I
Yeah,
offered you some today. You're
I
like, I already had
appreciate
my
that.
cold brew.
I had cold brew, so I'm good. If I have too much, I'll be a
Good.
bit of a jittery mess.
I love I'm not necessarily a connoisseur of coffee, and yet I love coffee.
A good coffee.
Yeah.
So, and I would say the other thing that I really enjoy is to be other places. I don't like getting there, but I love to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned we just got back from Rwanda.
Yes, go back to
Yeah,
that. Is
so
there a tie with your work then?
yeah. So part of the work that we've done. So Amy, she actually got she won a fellowship with Cigna. So now she's a Cigna Fellows, which is a great title. And what they do is they give their employees who win those scholarships, they give them 6 weeks and $20,000, and they say, "Hey, go and make a difference somewhere in the world." Super cool. Cigna's great like that. Amy being Amy, kind of wrestled deeply with what that might look like, and especially in the area that we visit in Rwanda is in the south, and it's in an area called Kigemi. It's the second poorest area of Rwanda, and if you just think about poverty and then you think about the second poorest, it's impoverished.
Mm-hmm.
There are 20,000 Congolese refugees who are present there. They were taken out of the Congo, pushed out of the Congo because they speak Kinyarwandan. The Congolese were saying, "You go into Rwanda. We don't want you here because you speak a different language," which is part of it's obviously dignity
Yeah.
violating, but it's part of the colonization process that
Sure.
occurred, and they drew lines of distinction where they didn't exist and create problems now today. So you take a very poor area and then you add another 20,000 people who've been displaced. It's a problematic. And so Amy looked at the hospital and said, "Okay, what can we do with 20,000?" And then we found an organization called Project Cure, who I can't affirm enough. Project Cure gets medical equipment and they put them in these giant containers. And it costs, depending upon where you go in the world, it costs roughly $20,000 to get a container and get it shipped. But you can fill it with about $400,000 worth of medical equipment. So we did an assessment at the hospital in Kigemi and found out what some of their needs were, and then are waiting actually right now. It should be mid-October when the container is actually filled, and we're trying to get it to the hospital in Kigemi. And so those are some of the partnerships that we have with Rwanda, working with the church there as well, but really trying to do things that are really dignity focused. So So if there's work that we can do with genocide survivors, we try to do that. And that can look really simple. I mean, we're not talking about, I'm not sitting across from somebody whose language I don't know and trying to work with them, but it might look like identifying who the widows are, and then what can we do to help them get housing,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe orphans. Many of the orphans now, of course, are older, but it's those kinds of things that we try to do there. And that was my 7th trip. I hope to make it many, many more. So.
Do you anticipate going soon once the container is there?
So the challenge is the timing. My
Yeah.
daughter's going to graduate from ASU on the 12th, and so
Of
that's
December? Yeah.
December. So I don't think that I'll be able to go when the container arrives. We were trying to do that with our trip, this last trip, but because of COVID, I mean, there's just been nightmarish delays and things like
Sure.
that have occurred.
With the
So
container
with the
specifically, I
containers,
can only imagine.
it's just been challenges after challenges. So
Congrats to your daughter, by the way, just the one
thank
daughter?
you. I have a daughter. She's 22,
Yeah.
and her name's Hannah. She's lovely. And
Shout out
my
to Hannah and Amy.
What's up, Hannah?
Good.
And my son JP is
Okay.
20, and he's in North Carolina, and he's actually kind of doing an entrepreneurial thing, which I'm really excited about. So
Very good.
yeah, they're flourishing right now. Right now, I say,
Yeah.
because you never
They'll
know.
continue.
Maybe
I have
so.
no doubt, given the parents that they
I
are
hope so.
a part of.
I hope so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing work.
Yeah, I love people.
Clearly.
Yeah.
And you have this this hum about you. It just right here.
It's my phone. It's in my pocket.
And just this vibe, right? This
Yeah.
very chill, very grounded, very soulful, very dignified.
No,
Yeah,
well, thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah. I had asked early on, but I don't think that we covered it. For our listeners who are thinking, gosh, I think I might like to work with Bob and I need to learn more about this for myself or my company. Who do you work best with? You said you work with everyone.
Yeah.
And we can say that, but
Yeah, of
marketing
course.
and branding will
I
tell
get
us
it.
that we ought to niche a little
I
deeper.
know, right? Yeah.
But you
Ideal
can
customer.
you could stay with everyone if you want.
Sure.
I guess I'm thinking from the listener's perspective. I know for one, I'm like, gosh, I need to get to know you and Amy better.
Sure.
Looking forward to growing that relationship. Let me ask the question differently then. If someone listening, whoever's listening, and they want to have a chance to connect, let's talk social media wise first. You're on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Where else?
So I do have a website, Fabey Insights. You can find me there.
Fabey.
Fabey Insights.com.
Okay.
That website's getting rebranded. There's a lot of rebranding occurring around the dignity theme,
Good.
and of course because of the books coming out. So LinkedIn and my website are probably the best.
Okay.
You will get, if you join me on Facebook, you'll get pictures of my dog Max and other things. So I don't use it primarily for business.
Me too.
But
sunrises and hikes and
beautiful, right?
puppies, right?
It's
That's
kind
where
of a
maybe me doing a silly dance every now and
Yeah,
again.
well, I actually this little inside. I really hate the song "Africa" by Toto. I hate it, and it's overplayed, and it drives me crazy. And of course, people on social media know my disdain. And recently, this guy who graduated high school with, shout out to Matt Heddick, he found a app that makes you sing a song.
Oh.
So it'll take your picture and it makes it
Mouth
look like
words.
and he
And
did
you're
that
singing
too.
it.
So
Can I find that
Oh,
on
it's
Facebook?
hilarious. It's on my Facebook page.
I'll be looking for
So
that.
those are the kinds of things you'll see on my Facebook
So
page
good.
instead of maybe some things about dignity. But I think LinkedIn and my website are primarily the places. And when it comes to who I want to work with, specifically, there are people who have companies that are large enough to deal with HR issues, but maybe don't have HR people or have trainers to come in and do some training for them. So I would say businesses in that size. I would also say people who are working hard at doing diversity and inclusion. I want to work with because I believe in those measures, and I also believe that there's a better way in terms of, when it comes to inclusion and belonging, people use the term belonging, and I think they're all reaching for dignity, but they're not. It's
kind
not
of poking around it.
Yeah, it's like, hey, how do you say that somebody's belonging? Well, they feel a certain way, and it's like, well, you need to start with identity, period.
Right.
And so I would say I'm happy to work with people who are struggling or wrestling with some of those issues. I'm also interested in working with people who aren't afraid of the deep dive. So I'm grateful for the title of the podcast and the radio show. because I just don't do soft and fluffy very well. I just kind of go
This is my brother
there.
from another mother.
Exactly.
Right. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what does it look like for someone to get started with you? Is it a phone
Sure.
call? Is it a discovery
Yeah,
session?
it's all of those things.
Mhm.
So it depends upon what they're comfortable with, but I just try to say, well, hey, let's get together.
Yeah.
Maybe I prefer a cup of coffee and just kind of understand a
Yeah.
little bit better what it is that they're looking for and maybe what kinds of things I can help them with. But I'm also like really happy to say I'm not the guy. So it's really important for me to kind of sit with someone and say, well, help me understand what you're facing because there are a number of tools and a number of assessments. It's a question of well, what works best.
Mhm.
I can do trainings around conflict resolution and other things like that, and so it's really trying to get at like, well, what are we dealing with here, and trying to help other people understand what they're dealing with because sometimes businesses say we're having a problem here, and it's like I understand that,
That's what it looks
but the
like.
problem is over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
So a cup of coffee, give me a phone call, but it's usually face to face. Try to discern what's going on.
Mhm. And yet, do you coach people outside of the Metro Phoenix area
I
as
do.
well?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And as a
We
matter of fact, I did a beta test of my Dignity Gap workshop with Australians.
Okay,
So
we
that was a
haven't
ton
talked
of
about
fun.
the workshop yet. I mean,
Yeah.
we teased around it.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is say, listen, if we're going to talk about dignity, there has to be a meaningful way for it to roll out within an organization. And so I put together a workshop in order
Good.
to do that and give people a baseline to say, okay, now if we're going to talk about this, let's get it in. And it's hopefully it goes beyond just, like, oh yeah, we did that workshop and we got the little shiny thing or whatever we're going to do to help people to be dignity champions. So the workshop is designed to come into an organization and say, okay, let's just at least start this conversation and why is this important and how do we do this practically? And so that's designed and ready to roll out. We're beta testing it right now just to make sure that we're kind of addressing some of the things that people might see they need. But that's something that I'd be more than happy to bring into an organization as
Very
well.
good. That's
Yeah.
great to know. And you have done the workshop with some Australians, you said?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was fun because of yeah, obviously over Zoom.
I was not assuming that. I was just assuming, hey,
That would
that'd
have
be
been
a heck of
awesome. I
a
know, right? It's like, please bring me to Australia.
right.
Although I'm terrified because I probably think of Australia the way that I did Arizona. I'm like Gila monsters and cacti, and then Australia was like, don't you have like deadly spiders and snakes there? It's like, I don't
I'm
want to go
thinking kangaroos and
Yeah,
crocodiles.
right away. I'm like
Yeah.
funnel web spiders and great whites and
So you
but
you
so
rolled this workshop out
I
via
did.
Zoom.
Yeah, so all the things that I do, I try to make sure that I can do virtually as well as
We
in
have
person.
to.
Yeah, and just to be completely frank, I mean, still trying to work out some of
Sure.
those kinks because it's not a natural thing for me to do. But I think it's important to try to beta test things and just say like, how are we doing? What does this look like? How does it
Hmm.
feel? It's really different when you're in the room with people, and I appreciate that.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, so I rolled that out. Had really really great responses, really specific feedback that I was really grateful for, and so looking forward to doing that with more companies here in the U.S.
Very good.
Yeah,
I will hopefully we'll get to help you do that.
that'd be
Yeah.
great.
We know
Yeah,
a few companies.
yeah, that's great.
Just one or
Yeah,
two.
one or two.
Yes. Early on in your upbringing and
Hmm.
life,
Hmm.
was there an influence or someone specific, a book you read, a speaker that you heard, or
Mm,
grandpa,
hmm.
where you just thought, I want to take part of that with me along
Mm.
the way? You mentioned that you became a Christian in college, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
But is there someone there for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think of it more like a mosaic for me, and so there were parts of people that I took with me. I mean,
Beautiful.
my dad, despite the difficulties that he taught me how to love people,
Hmm.
and I'm really grateful for that. My dad could see he's still with us, so I'm grateful. But so he can see the beauty in just about anybody, and I just love that about him. And so I always credit him with being somebody who has taught me how to love people. And despite the context, I did feel loved. But it was
Mm-hmm.
challenging. It's just that it's never 100% one thing. It's always a little bit of everything.
Yep.
And so that's why I think mosaic. So there were people along my journey who I credit with like, oh my gosh, without them that would not have happened, and without them that would not have happened. My mom helped pioneer home healthcare in Montana.
Really?
She's feisty, and I just love her. I call my mom Barb, which is really funny because it's off-putting to some people. They think, "How did you call your mom your first name?" I'm like,
How long have you been doing that?
a long time, and so it
I
just
was
doesn't even.
9.
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
probably.
I think it started in high school or
As a
something.
joke,
So
probably.
it was just kind of like it's Barb. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
she
don't
was
even.
Barb.
She's Barb, and she's my mom,
I love it.
and but she's fantastic, and all 4 of her, and she's a force to be reckoned with. But I really, I know that she went to like a Catholic nursing school, and she was taught, you treat every patient as if you were treating Jesus himself.
Hmm.
And so there was a piece of dignity laid into how she oriented to nursing and kind of grew in that context. And so I do believe that my parents obviously are kind of the fundamental people who have shaped me that way. I did a find your why session. I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, but this is one of the things that I do with people is I get that workbook and then I walk them through their why. And one of the ways that you do that is you chart some of the pros and cons of life,
Sure.
highs and lows and things. And nearly every high that I had was with Amy.
Oh, I love it.
And so I credit her with being somebody who has helped shape me in who I am. My children have done that as well.
Oh, they do,
So
don't they?
yeah, if you let them,
Yes.
and I've really tried to let them. I have so many regrets. I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done this
Oh,
better. I wish
sure.
I would have done this better. But I do believe in the beautiful people they're becoming,
Yeah.
and I like that about them. So it really is a mosaic for me. I didn't necessarily have that one steady influence, but I had a number of people in really timely spots where
Mhm.
it was like, oh my gosh, thank you for this.
Yes.
And even people that
Are crunchy.
crunchy, really hard on me, and deeply challenging, but I'm grateful for.
Yep.
So it's all of that. I don't know if that's a way to answer the
It's a
question.
fantastic way
Yeah.
to answer that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Genre of music. What do you like music-wise?
Oh, I'm totally a mood music guy. That's the worst.
Mood music.
Mood music. So I'm terrible, and I don't know if it's FOMO or it's something else, but I mean, recently we just went and saw Eric Darius, who
Oh,
who
Eric
yeah,
Darius.
if you don't know, and so I love jazz, smooth jazz. The Coyote was my favorite radio station here because it was just awesome, and
Yeah.
they play a bunch. So Eric Darius is a saxophonist who's phenomenal, and if he's super fun. The show was just, I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But then 80s metal. I mean, I can't get out of Metallica. It's so good. But then, there's I love flamenco guitar, and so it really is mood
Very.
music.
I'm the same.
My Spotify playlist is really
Mine
something.
too.
So,
Very
yeah,
eclectic.
yeah.
There's this guy that I've just started seeing on Instagram, young guy, and he does these little vignettes in his car, right, with music, and and it's so all over the place. But
Mhm.
I'm like, that's me. Like I can
Mhm.
in 1 minute I can be listening to not necessarily hard metal.
Yeah.
Classic rock's about as
Sure.
hard as I can go.
Okay.
But then the next minute I'm listening to classical
Yeah.
and feeling just as amazing listening
That's
to
right.
everything. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah. I mean, when you wake up in the morning in Rwanda and you put on Bob Marley, it's pretty good.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Three Little Birds. I mean, you're just like, this
And
feels right.
I'm here.
I'm here. This is so good.
And I'm being of service.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yes, I do have a sense of that, but I also have a sense. So recently we came to an ending for. We had 16 years of relationship with this parish in Rwanda, and we watched them develop, which was really really fun. And I was asked to speak, and you know, I'm not unaware of the differences between us. I'm not unaware of the fact that I'm a white, educated male who, in every respect is incredibly wealthy compared to these folks. And so what I chose to talk, I mean, I didn't have a lot of lead time, but I thought it through, and I said, well, let me tell you what you've taught us.
Mm.
And so I talked to them about the way they've taught us about forgiveness because of the genocide. We have much to learn in the way of forgiveness. Super, super challenging because all of us are broken, and they've taught us about hospitality in ways that we can't fathom. They've taught us about patience. They've taught us. So what I did was I kind of went through and talked about that. And so when I go there, I say, yes, I'm of service here, but I'm also learning.
Oh, sure.
And I'm like, you have a way of doing life, and particularly as a Christian, I say, well, you know Jesus in a way that I don't, and I need to learn more about you and what it means to be Christian from your perspective. And so my three little birds moment on the balcony at the place that I stay,
Yeah.
it's like all of that. It's like, yeah, I'm here and I am of service, but man, I'm learning so much and I'm so grateful because these people are so beautiful and it's pretty remarkable opportunity.
Hmm.
So that's how music can play that role. And then, as a matter of fact, there's video evidence of this, which I'm not proud
Okay,
of.
I've
But
got a second
no, no,
video
no,
I gotta
no, no,
look
no,
up.
no, no. You won't find it. It's only on my wife's phone.
Oh,
And I
okay.
told her, I'm like,
Amy?
don't you dare share
Right.
this, Amy.
Let me
So
give Amy my phone number.
yeah, please don't. So the kids, there's cross-cultural experiences I love them, and what I found is that most kids understand when you draw a line in the dirt and you stand there and you stare at them and you kind of smile, you turn your back. Well, most kids know, like, don't cross the line. It's just universal. I've done this in different cultures. And so I was playing this game with them where I would stand there and then they would run up to cross the line and I'd chase them and we were having a ton of fun. And this boy says in perfect English, which I was really grateful for, he says, I'd like to play a different game. And I looked at him and I said, well, what would you like to do? And he said, I'd like to dance. So I pulled up raw bass on my phone. It Takes Two. And I started playing raw bass from the 1980s. And we danced. And it was so fun.
My gosh.
It was so fun. So I appreciate music because it really can cross so many things, and it's a beautiful way of coming together. And so I love genres of music. I love them all. And I appreciate the way that musicians speak a language that I don't have. So I'm always like, I need you because you're
Yes.
voicing something I can't say without you.
Same.
Yeah.
In the work that I do, trauma work and here at the studio,
Mhm.
I grew up always wanting to be either an actress or a singer. I mean, in the early days,
Mhm.
I don't have chops for either.
Mhm.
And so when I listen to music, I think I've not been blessed with that gift, with a
Mhm.
voice or an
Mhm.
ability to play an instrument. How can I give somebody that same feeling, that same experience or similar experience
Sure.
in just the way that I show up? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I would say too that it's super funny because you just get put on the spot in certain places. And so there's literally 1,000 people in the room and they're all kind of like, what do you have to say? And I said, I apologize that I don't speak your language. I said, but I can see your smiles. And you can see my smile, and I'm trying to communicate to you that we love you and we're grateful for you.
Mm.
And there are things like that are little bridges towards dignity that really matter that we can communicate. And so I'm always grateful for that. Goes a long ways.
This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Bob Fabey, Fabey Insights.
Yeah.
Work Around Dignity.
Yep.
A book coming out in
Mhm.
November.
Mhm.
Where will we find the book? On your website?
It'll
Amazon
be
as well?
it'll
Or?
be on Amazon
Okay.
and all the outlets.
You'll
So,
let
yeah,
us know when
you bet.
it's ready?
I'll send you a
Well,
copy.
please. Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Angie and Daryl, if you'll make sure that they get the link,
Mhm.
we'll add it to the podcast
Perfect.
when that time comes.
Yeah.
Yes. I hope this is just one of many
I'd
conversations
love
with
that.
you and I and Amy.
Yeah, I'd love
I
that.
have a handful of people I'd love to introduce you to so that they can become familiar with you and your work.
That'd be great.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, thanks for your
Oh
time.
my gosh, my pleasure. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Work Center. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, I almost said music. Bob and I lean music, and the studio leans business. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thank you so much for listening.